The moment I was transmigrated into the body of the story's villain, I was about to force a kiss on the female lead. Two of my wannabe gangster lackeys had her pinned against the wall, one on each shoulder. If Ryu's taken an interest in you, that means you belong to him now, understand? The girl, trying to be brave, bit her lip and trembled in the corner, the edges of her eyes turning red. Years later, that same girl, now a powerful CEO, had me pinned against the office wall. She tugged my collar, her voice low and husky. "Ryu, my dear, who belongs to whom now? Ryu, the CEO wants to see you in her office." I met my manager's smug, knowing smirk. I didn't need to guess. He was definitely pinning the blame for that last project's massive failure on me. I was already prepared to pack my things and leave, so I didn't bother arguing with the boss who had it out for me. I just grabbed the materials I'd collected over the past few days and headed to the CEO's office. However, when I entered, I wasn't met with the scolding I had braced myself for. The female CEO I had never met before had her back to me, facing her desk, showing me only her silhouette. "Ryu, you cost me $10 million. How are you going to compensate me?" I wanted to argue my case, but the CEO's tone held a faint note of amusement, not like she was about to settle scores, which left me unsure how to respond. Seeing my silence, she spoke again. "For a normal person, I'd send them to jail, but for you, paying me back with your body isn't out of the question." As she said this, she swiveled her chair around, casually running a hand through her hair in a way that was both lazy and captivating. That face, so familiar yet so foreign, sent a tiny tremor through me. It was May, the female lead of this world. I had been a top student from a prestigious university, about to start my corporate life when a car crashed through me into this world, into the pages of a romance novel. I became the villainous side character, Ryu. The moment I arrived was that scene with the thin, trembling girl in the corner biting her lip, her eyes red with fear. I never expected that 5 years later I'd be pulled back into the main storyline. "Ms. Zhang, you must be joking." I lowered my head slightly, avoiding a direct answer to May's proposition. But she got up from her desk and walked straight toward me. May, in her high heels and a flowing red dress, was a vision of grace and power. Her formidable presence made me take a few steps back until my back was against the door. "Ryu, my dear, don't you miss me?" Her perfume enveloped me, her red lips brushing against my chin. I could hear my own heart pounding. "Ms. Zhang, please have some self-respect." With nowhere to go, I had to put a hand up to block her. "What? You don't like my suggestion? Where else are you going to get $10 million? If you won't sell your body, are you going to sell a kidney?" The timid, frightened girl from my memories was long gone. A tightness spread through my chest, but I kept my composure. "Selling my body isn't out of the question. I'm just not sure if the man in your life would mind." My flippant tone must have seriously annoyed May. Her face darkened as she raised a delicate eyebrow. "Don't worry, you're not nearly important enough to bother the man in my life." That sentence triggered a flare-up of an old ailment I hadn't felt in a long time. I clenched my fists so tightly my knuckles turned white. "I wonder how long Ms. Zhang intends to buy me for." My voice was cold and trembling, but May didn't seem to notice. Her eyes were boring into me as if trying to drill a hole through my face. "1 year for the 3 years of debt. I'm only asking for 1 year of service. You're getting a bargain, Ryu." 3 years. That was how long I had spent with May, a period I had deliberately tried to forget. Yet, there was no escape. After agreeing to May's indenture, I returned to my desk. In my pants pocket was the hotel room key she had given me. My manager, who had been ready to give me a grand send-off, stood there with his mouth agape, looking utterly ridiculous. A $10 million mistake brushed aside just like that. My colleagues started whispering, speculating about my relationship with the CEO. I sneered inwardly. May was the true heiress of the Zhang family, switched at birth by a nanny. Before she turned 18, she grew up in the city's grimiest alley. According to the main plot, she would be found by the Zhang family at 18, during her first year of college. From then on, her life would be glamorous and smooth, and Ryu was just a dark chapter from her school days, a desperate, clingy, and ultimately doomed villain. Taking advantage of everyone's assumption that I was connected to the CEO, I conveniently skipped out of work that afternoon. My primary physician scolded me, his disappointment palpable. "Didn't I tell you to manage your stress? Do you even want to live to 30? I bowed and scraped. admitting my fault and promising to be more careful next time, which only earned me a heavy sigh from the old man. After getting my prescription, I hurried to the hotel. If May wanted to buy this broken body of mine, then so be it. But I waited until almost 11 o'clock, and she never showed up. Not wanting to face the consequences of leaving without permission, I drifted off to sleep on the bed. When I woke up in the middle of the night, May was somehow in my arms. She had taken off her makeup and looked exhausted, sleeping soundly. I watched her for a long time without moving. "Ryu, my dear, don't go," May murmured softly, and I felt my eyes unexpectedly well up. 5 years had changed May a lot. The once skinny girl had filled out a bit. At least the Zhang family could provide for her materially. Back in that alley, I had suddenly transmigrated. To avoid suspicion, I had to play the part of the bully. Then, while my lackeys were jeering, I sent them away. Probably out of some misplaced sense of chivalry, I declared to everyone that May was my girl and no one was to mess with her. Under my protection, she had 3 relatively peaceful years. But the main plot of the world had to run its course. After her college entrance exams, the Zhang family came for her. They must have done their homework before arriving. The Zhang family matriarch first handed me a credit card. "May will soon forget her life outside. You're a smart boy. I don't need to say more." I looked at the card and gave a cold laugh. Then I stood up and walked out of May's life. I just never imagined that taking a random job would land me in a subsidiary of Zhang Corporation. Holding May like that, I fell asleep again. When I opened my eyes, May was already dressed and sitting in a chair, watching me. I ran a hand through my messy hair and got out of bed. "Why are you so thin?" May's tone was unreadable, as if it were a simple question. I quickly glanced down. Thankfully, the ugly scar on my chest wasn't visible. "Life's been tough, Miss Zhang. You know how it is for little guys like me. Always have to hustle. Hiding my emotions had always been my strong suit. You, on the other hand, Ms. Zhang, have filled out a bit, and of course, you're more beautiful for it." My flippant tone angered May once again. "You're still the same. Never a truthful word out of your mouth." I raised an eyebrow, not taking her words to heart. "From now on, you'll be my personal assistant. I hope you'll work hard to pay off your debt this year, Ryu." With that, May picked up her handbag and walked out. I looked at the untouched breakfast on the room service card and sighed silently. "May, why do you have to do this?" After enjoying a leisurely breakfast, I strolled into the company. The staff in the CEO's secretarial office were already at their desks, waiting for me. When my former colleagues heard I was being transferred to the CEO's assistant office, they all looked at me with suspicion, as if confirming the rumors that I was being kept. I paid them no mind, packed my things, and followed the secretary to the CEO's office. May had actually set up my desk inside her own office. "Ms. Zhang, I don't even get my own office. Is this how you treat your subordinates?" It was unbelievable. May was looking at a document and didn't even lift her head. "You can just serve tea and water from here. The distance is perfect." I shrugged. If she wasn't afraid of the inconvenience, why should I be? I hummed a little tune as I organized my now smaller desk. When I looked up, May was standing in front of me. "Whoa, Miss Zhang, what's up? Is there something I can do for you?" May stared at me blankly for a long moment. "You're actually in the mood to hum?" I was genuinely surprised by her question. Why shouldn't I be in the mood to hum? A promotion, a raise, and a beautiful woman by my side. Of course I'm going to hum. Promotion and raise? When did I ever promise you a promotion and raise? That really surprised me. What? Being the CEO's assistant doesn't come with a raise these days. May narrowed her eyes at me, looking like she was about to grind her teeth to dust. "Don't you forget, you're here to pay off a debt. Wasn't it an indenture I signed? Why are you docking my pay?" "Miss Zhang, that's a bit much, don't you think?" I refused to back down, trading barbs with her. May's face turned pale with anger. "Ryu, is money the only thing in your eyes now? You abandoned me for $5 million back then, and now you're selling yourself like a dog for $10 million. Hearing her harsh words, the smile on my face didn't waver. "Yes, that's the kind of person I am. You should know that, Miss Zhang." Yes, I clearly knew. May's eyes suddenly reddened, but she quickly turned away to hide it. My chest started to hurt again. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. "May, are you in?" A tall man then pushed the door open and walked in. "Kenji, what are you doing here?" May's demeanor shifted instantly, the various emotions she showed me vanishing as she transformed back into the heiress of the Zhang family. But that name sent a jolt through me. So this was Kenji, the novel's male lead. According to the original plot, after Mei returned to the Zhang family, she was supposed to marry Kenji. They would fall in love after marriage, eventually having 2 kids in 3 years. Kenji's appearance was another stark reminder that I was just a side character. With a catch like that at home, why would the CEO need to go shopping for company? I muttered, finding the sight of them together particularly grating. Ryu, shut up. Mei's cold voice struck my heart. I made a zipping motion across my lips with my hand and quickly made my exit, not wanting to spoil their private moment. As I left, I heard Kenji ask doubtfully who I was. Mei just replied, a newly hired assistant. My chest had long gone from painful to numb. I popped a pill into my mouth, trying to feel better. I must have stood up too quickly because my vision went black for a moment. I found an empty corner and leaned against the wall, trying to compose myself, and accidentally overheard a conversation. 2 gossips from some department were dishing about Mei and Kenji. The gist was that one was the sole heir to the Tanaka family, the other the sole heiress to the Zhang family. One was a brilliant mind from Stanford, the other a prodigy from Upine. It was then I learned that Mei had just returned from abroad to completely sever her ties with me. The Zhang matriarch had sent her overseas immediately after we separated, and she had just gotten engaged to Kenji upon her return. The gossip concluded with, a match made in heaven. I let out a soft, derisive laugh. The little girl I had cornered in the alley was probably gone forever. When I returned to the office, Kenji was gone. Mei was still engrossed in her documents. I had no interest in prying into the male lead's affairs and didn't know what I was supposed to do, so I just silently made a cup of coffee and placed it in front of her. It wasn't until her complicated gaze met mine that I realized I had habitually made her a café au lait with extra milk and sugar. Mei had endured a lot of hardship in the past, and after I had spoiled her, she developed a taste for sweet things. She wanted to be like others and drink coffee, so I used to mix milk tea and coffee for her. Back then, she would hold the cup, snuggled in my arms, a faint stain on her lips, sweetly calling me, Ryu, my dear. I would always have to restrain myself from wiping her mouth clean. What? After 5 years, is that the only kind of coffee you know how to make? Mei didn't hold back her sarcasm. I watched her lift the cup and drink it with a familiar ease, and I retorted coldly. After 5 years, you still have a taste for it, don't you? Let the games begin. Let's hurt each other. Ryu, how did you become so shameless? Mei gritted her teeth. I've always been shameless. Didn't you know, Ms. Zhang? I was the notorious tough guy in school back then. How else could I have protected Mei for 3 years? Ryu, is there a single true word that comes out of your mouth? Mei's voice was tinged with a sense of helplessness. I paused for a moment. My truth wasn't worth mentioning. Ms. Zhang, the gown for tonight's banquet has arrived. The chief secretary appeared again, saving the day. In his hands was a winered evening gown. Tonight, you and Ryu will accompany me. Mei took the gown, went into her private lounge, and left me with that instruction. I looked at the chief secretary, completely bewildered. What does that mean? The secretary looked at me with a blank expression, though I could sense his exasperation. Tonight is Ms. Zhang's welcome home banquet. You and I will go with her. Me? What can I do? I didn't even have clothes for such an event. If not for my excellent poker face, I'm sure he would have seen me roll my eyes. He patiently explained it to me. Zhang Corp was now run by Mei, and this was her first major event since returning from abroad. As her secretary and assistant, we had clear roles. He was in charge of socializing, and I was in charge of miscellaneous tasks, and when necessary, drinking on Mei's behalf. As for the clothes, the ever-resourceful chief secretary somehow produced a perfectly tailored suit for me. Just as I was getting a handle on my duties for the evening, Mei emerged from the lounge, already changed. The sight of her left me momentarily stunned. At the banquet hall, I realized Kenji had sought out Mei earlier to coordinate their evening attire. They naturally arrived together, while the secretary and I stood on either side of them like a pair of cheap bodyguards. Correction, only I was the cheap one. Mei held Kenji's arm, her smile perfectly poised. I watched her, my feelings a complicated mess. It was like a flower I had painstakingly nurtured had bloomed in a place I never knew. But a working man has no time for melancholy. I was quickly pulled along by the chief secretary, trailing behind the golden couple, still carrying Mei's small clutch. My appearance must have been comical. Mei didn't ask me to drink for her. I never knew she could hold her liquor so well. Not having to drink suited me just fine in my current physical state. A couple of glasses would have exposed me, but the ballroom was still stuffy and made me feel unwell. While May was busy negotiating with someone and not paying attention, I excused myself to the secretary and escaped to the restroom to splash some water on my face. So you're Ryu? Kenji had followed me, his reflection in the mirror staring at me with a chilling coldness. I raised an eyebrow, waiting for him to continue. You're back to pestering May? Did you burn through that $5 million so quickly? It was the same old story. I couldn't be bothered to explain myself to May, let alone to Kenji. Mr. Tanaka, you're welcome to ask your fiancé if I'm the one pestering her. My gaze then drifted downwards. Besides, if you were doing your job properly, the CEO wouldn't need to outsource. Kenji's face turned pale with rage. For a second, I wondered if he was the one with the heart problem. You, the Zhang matriarch, was right. You're just a scoundrel. Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. The old lady really spared no effort in slandering me. Since I'm a scoundrel, why are you getting so worked up over me, Mr. Tanaka? Lacking confidence, are we? These high society types were so boring. A couple of sentences from me, and they were ready to keel over. Kenji, are you still in there? Kenji must have been gone for too long because May came looking for him. To my astonishment, as soon as Kenji heard her voice, he clutched his chest and collapsed on the floor. I didn't even have time to step away and clear my name. The sound of a large man hitting the ground was loud enough to make May rush in immediately. Kenji, are you okay? May's worried expression was genuine. Perhaps they wouldn't even need to wait for love to blossom after marriage. I quickly raised my hands, indicating my innocence. We just had a little chat. I didn't know he was so fragile. You can't blame this on me. May glared at me, her eyes filled with fury. He has a heart condition. Why would you provoke him? I quickly waved my hands. I didn't provoke him. I was just washing my face, and he insisted on talking to me. Just shut up. May cut me off before I could finish. The chief secretary also rushed over at the commotion. A group of people hustled Kenji onto an ambulance. In the chaos, someone bumped into me and my back slammed against the door. The impact sent a sharp jolt through my chest, and I nearly lost my footing. Soon, I was the only one left in the restroom. I stared at my pale reflection in the mirror and managed a bitter smile. You see, the world's main plot must run its course, and here I was, once again, the villainous side character. The next time I regained consciousness, I was in a hospital bed. When the nurse saw I was awake, she quickly called for someone. My doctor was so angry, his mustache was practically quivering. If I had known you were so reckless, why would I have saved you in the first place? Wasting a perfectly good heart. The old man was beyond disappointed. Back then, my heart was failing and I was on the verge of death. My colleagues rushed me to the hospital. It was the old doctor who pulled me back from the brink. The heart beating in my chest was a donation from some kind soul. In short, I was lucky to have been given a second chance at life. At the time, I didn't understand why I had survived. After last night's events, it dawned on me. The main plot of this world still needed me, so I lived. But if my existence was merely to serve as an NPC to advance the love story of the main characters, I would rather not have been saved. At least then my memories would only contain the May who had relied on me completely. With an oxygen mask on, I managed to smile for the old man. After stumbling out of the banquet hall, I knew I was in bad shape. I took a cab to the hospital, and, by some stroke of luck, the old doctor happened to be on duty in the ER. That's how I cheated death again. Having just cheated death, I was already anxious to be discharged. The old man waved his hand dismissively, as if he couldn't care less if I lived or died. But what could I do? A corporate drone doesn't get to rest. The main reason was that I didn't want May to find out about my illness. Who knew I would be so unlucky? Before I could even leave the hospital, I ran into May, who was rushing in. What are you doing here? Her tone was still icy, probably still upset about Kenji's hospitalization. I shook the bag of medicine in my hand. Had an allergic reaction to the alcohol. Just got some meds to clear it up. Don't worry, Miss Zhang. I made sure not to appear before your precious Kenji again. May looked at my face suspiciously. I must have looked terrible, but May knew about my alcohol allergy. Then get out of here and rest. I'm staying at the hospital with Kenji today, so you have the day off. Thanks, boss. I waved and left May with my back. I endured the sharp pain in my chest and walked out of the hospital. Only when I was sure May couldn't see me anymore did I squat down to ease the pain. If I had known I'd get the day off, I wouldn't have rushed to be discharged. If I ended up back in the ER, the old doctor would probably tear me to pieces. The sound of cars whizzing by filled my ears. I forced myself to endure the intense pain, hailed a cab, and went back to my rented apartment. As I drifted in and out of consciousness, I kept thinking I saw May. Ryu, my dear, you don't study yourself, so why are you always watching me? In my dream, a reluctant May was being forced by me to memorize vocabulary at a desk. I smiled and gently tapped her nose. Our May is going abroad in the future to make big money and support her Ryu. May wrapped her arms around my neck and wrinkled her nose. Why do I have to go abroad? Is Ryu going abroad too? Your Ryu wants to go with you, so I have to go out and make money now. Hearing this, May's eyes reddened. Ryu, my dear, I'll make money to support you in the future. I'll make you all plump and happy. Silly girl, only little pigs get plump and happy. And your Ryu can't go abroad with you anymore. In the dream, I clutched my chest, the pain so intense it felt like I was dying. When I opened my eyes, I was still alive. I had no idea how long Kenji's act would last. The next day, May still didn't come to work. As the CEO's assistant, if the CEO wasn't there, I naturally had a lazy day. Still recovering from my illness, I didn't have much energy. But I never imagined that May would be gone for a whole week. Even the secretary didn't show up. I felt like a free-range chicken, completely at a loss. The documents waiting for May's signature had piled up. I had no choice but to call the chief secretary. It was then I learned that May had been at the headquarters all this time. The secretary, of course, was with her. It finally dawned on me that our small company was just one of many subsidiaries under the Zhang family. How could May possibly stay here forever? When I told him about the pile of documents, the secretary just said he would pass it on to the CEO and quickly hung up. I relayed the situation to the department heads. After being an assistant for so many days, I was finally starting to feel like one. Just as I was continuing to enjoy the peace and quiet and recuperate, someone I least wanted to see showed up. You really are shameless. The Zhang family matriarch looked at me with her usual condescending expression. You've got it all wrong. I haven't been near May for the past 5 years. I didn't even bother to stand up, having no desire to talk to her. Is that any way to speak to an elder? You have no manners. An elder? Who's elder? May's. What's my relationship with May? The star-crossed lovers you tore apart? The exes who will never see each other again. My eyes were filled with disdain. I had no patience for this old woman. I offered you $5 million back then, and you refused. I thought you had some pride. What happened? You turned around and cost the company $10 million. The old woman said, throwing a stack of documents on my desk. May indulge you, but I won't. I'm not going to waste my breath on you this time. If you don't want to go to jail, then get lost. I cursed under my breath. I had forgotten about this old hag, and she had caught me. But a $10 million contract wasn't enough to send me to jail, was it? I picked up the documents to see what she was up to. One look, and I nearly had a heart attack from anger. At your age, you're still playing the framing game? Humph, just showing you what an old woman is capable of. She seemed certain I would compromise. Your health is poor, and you didn't recover well after the surgery because you had no money. Consider the money in this card as compensation. Seeing my apparent hesitation, she produced another card and placed it in front of me. I had no doubt how she knew about my major surgery, but this money was a slap in the face. I threw $5 million back at you then, and I won't take your money today. You just watch over your granddaughter. I'll disappear, I said calmly, and started to pack my things. It wasn't because of her threats. It was because the main plot with May and Kenji had to happen, and I didn't want to watch them fall in love, letting an unchangeable storyline turn me into a villainous NPC. Ryu, you coward. May burst through the door, followed by her secretary whose hair was a mess from running. May, what do you think you're doing? Is this a rebellion? The men May brought and forcibly escorted the Zhang matriarch to a nearby chair and held her down on both sides. But May ignored the hysterical woman. Her eyes red as she walked step by step towards me. Ryu, my dear, are you going to leave me again? Her voice was filled with a sense of grievance. I bent down slightly and turned my head, unable to look at her. Ms. Zhang, I'm just a nobody, why bother? Ryu, my dear, you're lying to me again. May ignored my words and threw herself into my arms. The Zhang matriarch, pinned to her chair, was nearly apoplectic with rage. May, have you no shame? May paid no attention to her angry shouts. Her tears soaked through my shirt. I was at a complete loss. You. Hey, what are you crying for? Ryu, my dear, wait for me. We'll talk in a minute. With that, May wiped her tears and with a completely different expression, walked over to the old grandmother. Thank you for raising me all these years. It's thanks to you that I was able to take over the Zhang family so quickly. She then held out her hand to the secretary, who quickly handed her a document. This is the share purchase agreement I just acquired. May waved the document in her hand. I now control 80% of the Zhang Group's shares, giving me absolute authority. Grandmother, it's time for you to rest. The old woman was stunned by May's move, stammering about how it was impossible. May patiently explained it to her. Ever since she returned, she had been planning this. Kenji's hospitalization at the banquet a few days ago had given her the perfect opportunity. Under the pretext of visiting Kenji at the hospital, she had secretly contacted several major shareholders and bought their shares at a high price. As for the money, she had earned it by investing in a software company during her studies abroad. The old woman still couldn't believe her defeat. May shook her head, looking at her with pity. Your old grandmother. The group needs me, not you. This statement was a huge blow to the old woman, and she seemed to deflate completely. I've arranged for a high-end nursing home for you. Don't worry, I'll see to it that you're taken care of in your old age. With that, May coldly gestured for her men to take the old woman away. The stunned matriarch was quietly placed in a wheelchair and pushed out. I watched the whole scene unfold like a movie, my mind unable to process it. This wasn't how the main plot was supposed to go. How could May send the old woman to a nursing home? According to the story, she was supposed to get married, have children, and live a happy family life. Although her relationship with the old woman wasn't deep, they weren't supposed to become enemies. What went wrong? Was it because of my changes? Would May be affected by ousting the old woman? She had no family left in the Zhang household. I shook my head in horror, backing away. I started to regret my moment of weakness back then for May. Ryu, my dear, seeing my terrified expression, May rushed towards me. Amidst her frantic cries, I clutched my chest and collapsed in pain. This world was wrong. Could I even survive? As it turns out, I'm as resilient as a cockroach. I opened my eyes once again. This time, I was in a premium hospital room. May was slumped by my bedside, looking exhausted. I tried to lift my hand, but the pain in my chest was so intense I couldn't even manage that. My movement woke May up. Ryu, my dear, you're awake. She threw herself onto me, her eyes red again, looking nothing like the formidable CEO. I sighed. May, why do you have to do this? I had tried so hard to push you back onto the main plot. Why did you have to walk right back into the fire? After I saved May in the alley back then, I felt an inexplicable tenderness for her and took her under my wing. Through our daily interactions, we fell in love. I knew the main plot of this world wouldn't let us be together. Back then, I wanted to fight against fate, to be with the one I loved. But I didn't know that the main plot couldn't be changed. As the original side character, my drastic change in personality had affected the progression of the story, so this world tried to erase me. I discovered this before May's college entrance exams. My perfectly healthy body suddenly started experiencing heart palpitations. I would faint for no reason. When I woke up, I would find that May had unconsciously advanced the plot. It wasn't until I fainted one more time that I was diagnosed with idiopathic heart failure. I hid it from May, wanting to stay with her until her exams, because I knew the Zhang family would come for her after that. Everything went as I had predicted. After the Zhang family found her, I disappeared from May's world. Perhaps my timely exit satisfied the main plot, or perhaps it still needed me to advance the story later. In any case, I survived. But now with May completely deviating from the main plot, I couldn't imagine what she would face. Ryu, my dear, you big liar. You've been lying to me all along. I know everything now. May suddenly burst into tears. I looked at her helplessly. I had never been able to handle her tears. Don't cry. I didn't lie about much, just that I had surgery. Now that I was in the hospital, I knew I couldn't hide the surgery anymore. I know why you left, but she wasn't talking about that at all. I looked at her speechless. You want me to follow the plot of the novel, don't you? May's question stunned me into silence. How did you? I couldn't help but ask. May wiped her tears and gave me a cold snort before explaining. It turned out she had long felt that many things were beyond her control. For example, During those 3 years, whenever she felt her love for me deepening, she would become inexplicably irritable. At first, she thought it was because of her personality change that my former self had been too terrifying. Later, she realized something was wrong because she would do strange things without being aware of them. For instance, she would think she had fallen asleep, only to wake up to a newly finished painting or freshly washed clothes. It started with small things like that. It wasn't until after her exams, when the Zhang matriarch appeared, that things escalated. She had initially refused to go home and ran out to find me, but then she inexplicably lost consciousness and woke up abroad. During that time, she had somehow gone through security and applied to schools all by herself. All this terrified her, and she began to suspect that someone else was controlling her. Later, when I was abroad, I met a senior student. She told me she'd once read a novel where the female lead had my name. She even mentioned the male lead was Kenji and Ryu was the detestable villain. Then she could never find the book again. That's when I finally figured it out. May held my trembling hand and stared into my eyes. Ryu, my dear, your personality changed so drastically back then. You knew who you were, didn't you? You knew before I did, and you wanted me to live out the novel's ending, right? Faced with May's questions, I pressed my lips together, unable to speak. After a long moment, I finally calmed down. If that's the case, you shouldn't be involved with me. I turned my head away, afraid that looking into her eyes would make me waver. May pulled open my hospital gown. Just to make me follow the plot, you pushed me away and nearly died in secret behind my back. Her tears felt like they were dripping onto my heart, scalding me with pain. I ignored my ugly scar and tremblingly wiped her tears. May, I want you to live a good life. I finally broke down, my voice choked with emotion. How can I live a good life without you? You never asked me what I wanted. If you didn't want to be with me forever, why were you so good to me? Why did you give me those 3 years? May sobbed, gently patting my back. Do you know? When I saw you at the company, I wanted to drag you over and beat you up, but I held back. I wanted you to taste the pain of a broken heart. But when I found out you almost died, I was so heartbroken. I almost died with you. Ryu, you coward. Listening to May's heart-wrenching accusations, I felt so much pain I almost fainted again. I tremblingly held her. She suddenly remembered I was still sick and quickly pulled away. Ryu, my dear, are you okay? It's all my fault. I forgot you were still sick. I'll go get the doctor. May's panicked state made me laugh. It was as if the innocent, naive May was back. May, let me hold you for a little longer. I haven't held you in 5 years. I smiled gently and pulled her back. Who says 5 years? You secretly held me at the hotel that night. May pouted accusingly. I smiled and ruffled her hair. Whatever the outcome, I wanted to bask in this warmth for a little while. After we cleared the air, May forced me to stay in the hospital until I was fully recovered. She would come up with new delicious meals for me every day. I felt bad for her, working from the hospital, and pretended to be angry to make her go home and rest. She finally agreed to let me stay alone in the hospital for one night. The main plot of this world hung over my head like a sword, forcing me to be constantly on guard. Without May, I couldn't even sleep soundly. I opened my eyes and my heart nearly stopped. Kenji, what are you doing here? Kenji stood by my bed like a ghost. The moonlight on his face made him look even more terrifying. I saw him slowly raise a knife, ready to bring it down on me. With no time to think, I scrambled and rolled off the bed. You are a bug in the system. I have to correct you. Kenji chanted as he advanced on me. I dragged my sick body, desperately dodging his knife. Calm down, Kenji. I looked at his vacant eyes, trying to bring him back to his senses. I knew he was being controlled by the main plot. Taking advantage of the moment he froze from my shout, I rushed to the door, but the door was locked tight and wouldn't open. Sober, I thought. Just when I was at my wit's end, I saw my phone charging by the bed. As Kenji lunged at me again, I spun around, grabbed the phone, and pressed the emergency shortcut. Then I quickly snatched the vase from the table and smashed it over Kenji's head. Blood streamed down his hair. The gruesome sight made me tremble. I vaguely heard May's voice on the phone. I had to buy time until May arrived. In the small hospital room, Kenji and I played a deadly game of cat and mouse. Just as my strength was about to give out, he cornered me by the window. Having just reconnected with May, was I a mere NPC destined to die at the hands of the protagonist? A wave of defiance washed over me. I wanted to fight for myself, for us. I lunged, grabbing his legs with all my might. He lost his balance, and the knife plunged into my back. Ignoring the searing pain, I used every last ounce of strength to flip him over. With a loud thud, Kenji's head hit the iron bed frame as he collapsed in a pool of blood. My own fragile body finally gave out, and I fainted. "Ryu, my dear. Wake up. Ryu, my dear." May's choked sobs woke me up again. I didn't know how many lives I had, but I was still alive. "May." When I tried to speak, I realized I was on a ventilator again. Seeing me awake, May started to wail, which almost made me faint again. It wasn't until I was moved out of the ICU that I learned I had been in a coma for a month and had almost become a vegetable. As for Kenji, he had suffered brain damage and lost his memory. Although he had tried to harm me, he was ultimately being controlled by the main plot. I didn't hate him for it. When I suggested May let him off the hook, she just snorted and had him sent to a long-term care facility. The Tanaka family, faced with irrefutable evidence that Kenji had attacked me first, didn't pursue the matter. With Kenji's memory gone, the novel's main plot never tried to control us again. May and I were finally free to love each other. A month later, I was resurrected from my near-death state and finally discharged. The day I returned to the company, May pinned me against the office wall, tugged my collar, and said in a low, husky voice, "Ryu, my dear, who belongs to whom now?" I gently kissed the corner of her mouth. From my heart to my soul, Ryu belongs to May. Then we kissed, long and deep. For the one I loved, what did it matter if I had to fight the world itself? Thankfully, we had gambled and won.